Hi, Steve. Thank you so much for coming back to meet with me and answer the questions we did not get to in your webinar with us yesterday on what quality auditors really want to know or want to see. We had so many questions, we just couldn't get to them all. So you're going to answer the unanswered questions here. We're going to post this on LinkedIn. And that way, anyone who's seeing this for the first time as well can go to intellect.com and view the replay of the webinar. They can also view the other webinar you did for Intellect, which is guerrilla tactics for quality leaders, which is also very popular, a lot of questions as well. So I just wanted to address the unanswered questions from yesterday's Q&A for those who either had to leave the webinar early or just didn't get their question answered. So we're just going to go through the list and knock through them.
All right.
All right. First question, during an internal audit, can you audit processes that you are aware of ahead of time that might affect the QMS and issue findings? So they gave an example. Supplier audits. During the preparation process, can you ask a former employee of that supplier to explain the processes, but not to point out issues? The employee works for the auditing company now. So somebody who wants to prep for their audit.
Yeah, there's kind of two elements to that. The first, let's go with the easy one, which is can you audit processes you're aware of ahead of time? Auditors always like to do prep, right? And so, when I do audits with my clients, I always tell them, look, I want to get your quality manual ahead of time. And if I know specifically what processes we're going to look at, then I'll ask for those SOPs, because I said during the webinar, nobody enjoys watching the auditor read, right? And unfortunately, that's what takes up a lot of the time during an audit. So yeah, I mean, the opportunity to do that ahead of time and kind of start to think about what questions do I want to ask here, I think makes a lot of sense. And it should be normal practice. Now, to the other point, just where they added in that little tidbit about asking a former employee, we're kind of stepping on some ethical boundaries here. I'd just be careful about doing something like that, about getting information from an outside source, right, which is no longer associated with the company. And I think they said, the employee works for the auditing company now. There may be some danger there between the two companies' relationship. So I'd step really carefully about asking for that kind of thing. Now I will share, when I was the head of internal auditing for a large medical device manufacturer, I did occasionally get things surreptitiously passed to me before doing an audit, where I could tell somebody in the department wanted to make sure I didn't miss something because they weren't getting management's attention. And I showed up one day on my cubicle, and on my chair was an envelope, and inside it was an external audit report that was just very scathing, and apparently never saw the light of day. So that kind of stuff does happen, but in that case, it's sort of like, well, it's good to know this. This shouldn't have been buried, right? This is it was an important function in the company, and I see what they're saying here. They're concerned by the fact that management didn't want to react to this other audit report, so now I've got to do something to bring it forward.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Very good points there. Next question, and you referenced this in your presentation, but the question referred to, are inspectors asking for digital copies and not paper copies more often now?
I mean, we'll ask. It's certainly easier, to review something. We talked about, do you just put it up on the screen, or do you actually give the auditor, a repository that they can just pull up the documents, or actually let them in to systems? Paper is just very inefficient. You got to sit there and you scroll through, and sometimes I want to just search on things, right? I want to search for certain keywords, and then you're always paging back and forth, and that's even difficult if it's on the screen and somebody else is controlling the scrolling. Then I'm sitting the whole time going, go ahead. It's like, and then it's like, oh, I saw something earlier. Could you scroll back a few pages? And then you're back and forth trying to find stuff. So I think, taking advantage of our digital tools just makes things go a lot smoother.
All right, wonderful. Next question, how do you convey to the business the difference between operational audits, which corporate internal audit performs, and quality audits managed by the quality team? Because the use of internal audit by both groups can be confusing. So how can you best address that within the organization?
I'm a fan of keeping things simple. So just refer to them more clearly as to what they are. If you can't influence your corporate audit, group and they just want to keep calling them internal audits, fine. Then as a quality organization, just refer to yours as internal quality audits. And then put something out there. You could put a quick, educational deck together that talks about, hey, the company does all kinds of due diligence, internally, and these are the different types of audits that go on, so that people then hear them. They go, oh, okay, that's the finance, the accounting audit. This is the legal audit. This is a quality audit. So education's always the way to go, but to simplify it, just use terms that are more accurate.
All right, very simple. Top leadership owns the quality management system, correct? Or have they restated the leader of the QMS should be top management or is top management? Do you agree with that statement?
It's not necessarily an across the board thing. Part of the requirement in the standards and the regs is that you need to identify who do you consider to be top management. Where in the current FDA regulation, they refer to it as management with executive responsibility. And that could be structured very differently at different companies, right? If you're a small company, then yeah, it might be the president of the company and everybody who reports to them. If you have multiple sites or multiple divisions, then you got to think about how do you want to structure this, and are there site specific, top management groups, and then a corporate one that they kind of tie into dotted line. So it's meant for the organization to figure that out and say, well, this is how we're set up. So this is how we're going to set up what we consider to be top management. The thing I will say is be careful of. I went to a very small company at one point, a client, about 15 people. And when I asked the question, so who is top management per the regulation in your company? And the CEO looked at me and said, I am. And I went, nobody else participates in the question. And he goes, yeah, they do. And I said, yeah, because you have a director of engineering and a director of customer support. I said, no, you need to redefine this. They are part of management with executive responsibility or top management under the standard. But yeah, I would hope that whoever the top, quality person is, that they're considered part of top management. That's part of the reason auditors often ask to see org charts. They want to see where is quality positioned, and are they positioned in a place where they can operate independently. Personally, I like to see them reporting to the CEO. I don't want to see them buried under another function that they could run into a conflict with. And that's why each company has to figure out what is the answer to this question.
All right, fair enough. You talked quite a bit in your presentation about kind of keeping an eye on the auditor inspectors. So we have a question that is, what is the objective of watching the FDA inspector? If they are looking in windows and trash cans, are we supposed to stop them from doing so? Or just to notify all personnel that the inspector's there?
It's more to just be aware, right? You're not going to be able to, FDA has authority to do things like that, right? They have authority to do a full inspection. So you're not going to be able to walk over and go, hey, stop looking in our dumpster. That they're going to ignore you, basically, but you want to be aware of it. I talked about the example we had found out that somebody said, hey, this auditor likes to sneak into the building. So you certainly want to stop that, right? And that one you could go, look, we have security protocols here, and you can't just walk in. You have to come in through the front entrance and sign in, and they'll abide by that. But when they're doing things like dumpster diving or looking in windows, you'd like to be aware, right? So that you can maybe ask later, in the audit, going, hey, I saw you were looking in the window. You're looking for anything we can answer, right? Show that you're being cooperative and you're not trying to hide anything, and you want to, like I said, play a more active role in the audit rather than just going, well, I wonder what that'll lead to, right? Or getting surprised later when they say, oh, well, we were looking through a window and we observed something. You went, you saw what? You never want to be caught by surprise.
All right, thank you. Along those lines, the question was posed, if an auditor is given access to the EQMS, how is the best way to escort them?
Yeah, that gets a little tricky. And like I said, I would probably only consider that for, if you're using an outside body, like a consultant to do your internal audits, then by all means, let them into your system. And, it doesn't really matter where they go. You're actually paying them almost more like a consultant than an auditor. But when it's your notified body, your certified body, a regulatory body, yeah, I don't know that I'd want to turn them loose. And so I don't know that I'd even go down that path.
Sure.
Unless you, could really control their access, right? That somewhere in the security of the system, You can establish which modules can they get into, and are there certain record types, that aren't going to be visible to them unless somebody else shows them to them. So if you have good control of your system, which is part of in the FDA world, part of the Part 11 requirements, that you have those kind of controls, then you could probably find a way to manage it. But yeah, with outside auditors, it's probably best to, in terms of those options, we said paper, all right, fine, not very efficient, but putting it up on a screen and at least letting them see how you got it in the system, and then, at least you're controlling where they're looking.
Makes sense. All right, final question. What is a tip that you have to offer about something that may be considered common knowledge graduating to a documented procedure?
There's a couple of different ways to address this. One, I talked about that auditors get suspicious when documents don't look like they've been touched a long time, and you should have some sort of records that shows that you're doing a periodic review. That would then imply that you have a process defined for what does a periodic review consist of. And you might want to build into that process, every 2-3 years, if an SOP or a work instruction hasn't otherwise been updated, then we're going to throw that back to the owner, and they should pull together a team of, process participants and go through and go, is this still reflect what we're doing? Have we learned anything that we need to capture in here? The other is, creating guidance documents, something off to the side. This is not binding within the organization, but here's what we've learned, things to keep in mind, suggestions. The trick with that is people often like to use guidance documents because they think that means they're inauditable. Again, anything that's part of your quality system, the auditor can look at. So if you say, yes, we have guidance documents, the auditor is going to want to go, oh, well, show me what you're doing there, because that's part of that. I said they want to see, do you understand the intent, the why behind the regulations? Well, your guidance is probably where you're trying to do that. So it's fair game for them to look at, that kind of guidance stuff. It doesn't hide anything from them and make it not fair game anymore. The other thing I've seen done is, there's the old, suggestion box, kind of approach. These days you can do that, through things like wiki pages, and just create a place for people to quickly type in ideas and, suggestions. And hey, I learned this about our process today. You do want to be careful. You want somebody watching that. You don't want any smoking guns sitting in there. There's ways to get creative about it. But like I said, at a minimum, you should have a process for doing periodic reviews, and then define what is it you want people to do as part of those periodic reviews, which would include find out if anything new has been learned or is changed, right? And how we actually do the work.
All right, great. Well, that was all the questions that we didn't get to at the webinar. Again, you can access a replay of the webinar at intellect.com. Thank you very much, Steve. You are a wealth of knowledge in all things quality. We appreciate your expertise.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, thank you.